Namaste, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Pushpita Prasad. I am part of the steering committee of CoHNA, which is the Coalition of Hindus of North America. We are a grassroots advocacy group that is dedicated to improving and understanding the knowledge about Hinduism in both US and Canada. We focus on raising a collective voice on matters related to the Hindu community and to educate the public about Hindu heritage and tradition. Today we are very excited because tomorrow, March 8th, is International Women's Day. And it's only fitting that this is an important touch point for us as a Hindu community because Shakti, as we all know, Shakti is the ancient Sanskrit word for power, and it is seen as an inherently feminine trait. So Hinduism is a religion that has always celebrated womanhood and strong womanhood. We also honor the feminine in divinity, with Devi worship being one of the biggest aspects of our religion. I think we can proudly claim to be the only mainstream faith of significant size still alive today, where these ancient traditions are celebrated and honored. So, with that background, I'm really excited to introduce two very powerful women who are joining us today to talk about these issues. Professor Madhu Kishwar, who's probably needs no introduction, but her life work represents a rare combination of academic scholarship and research-based and social and legal activism. She has focused on women's rights, Indic issues, cultural traditions, PILs, investigative journalism, marginalized groups. I could be talking for a long time. She is one of India's most well-known academics, commentators, and activists, having authored many books and publications. Professor Kishwar has also co-founded Manushi, a highly acclaimed and pioneering journal about women's rights in India, which I think can deservedly claim to be instrumental in having set the agenda for women's rights in India for decades. And over the years, she has helped create a number of documentary films and has been awarded with many awards at many levels for her work. Then we also have Preity Upala, who is equally impressive with her background, having been brought up in the Middle East and Australia and now living in California, the United States. She is a former investment banker turned media entrepreneur, an author and a political analyst whose work has appeared in over 100 publications, including the Times of India, Business Standard, Observer, Israeli publications all over the world. She has spoken at various think tanks and global summits, such as WEF, and her literary and journalistic work represents her expertise in foreign policy, South Asian politics, conflict resolution, and international diplomacy, and I believe the latest ad of cricket. And she has given thousands of lectures to students and corporate clients on the issue of Sanatan Dharma, feminism, soft power, and Indian philosophy. So thank you both. We are so excited to have you both on here. So I think I would just love to get started. We have limited time. There's so much to hear from both of you. So with Women's Day around the corner, women, it's a day, but it's a negotiation that women have to deal with every day. We as Hindu women live in a world that is dominated by men, which is something women of all faiths deal with. But then we also live in a world that is dominated by Western or Abrahamic paradigms. So I would love to hear from both of you how you navigate these issues and stay true to your background and faith. So Madhuji, if you would let us know.
Thank you, Pushpita, for this very warm introduction. And I look forward to talking to both of you about my experiences with women's rights issues in India. That one of my most celebrated as well as the most controversial essays was titled "Why I Do Not Call Myself a Feminist." It's not because I have something in particular against women's rights issues, far from it, even though I have devoted all my life to working to strengthen women's rights as well as rights of all other vulnerable groups in our society. But I'm averse to all isms and ideologies, especially those that emanate from the West. And the reason is simply this, that the foundational values and mindset informing ideologies emanating from the West with its Abrahamic mindset is intolerance, and a very virulent form of intolerance and desire to vanquish through brute force and destroy all pre Christian, pre Islamic cultures and faith traditions in order to subjugate and force them to be loyal, wagging tails of Christianity or Islam. Both are filled with prejudice and hatred for all humanity, which does not fall into the conversion trap. The choice offered to us kafirs or infidels is death or conversion. And they're very racist to the core. You living in North America would know that non white Christians are never at par, non Arab, non Turks are never at par, even if they convert. Their commandment giving God is actually the commandment giving God of the Christians is no different from Allah. Both are jealous, intolerant, and threaten hideous forms of punishments to those who choose to live their life their own way instead of converting and falling in line. The modern day isms and ideologies emanating from the West are loaded with the same biases. You are treated as a lower species if you don't fall in line with, refuse to identify yourself as a leftist, socialist, postmodernist. I mean, every day or every few months there's a new fashion and you must fall in line. Just as often as they change their clothing fashion and hairstyle fashion, so also these ideologies come and then try to prove everybody else is to be not just wrong, but as though subhuman species, less intelligent, less cerebral than the others, not awakened enough. And as far as feminism is concerned, like socialism, it's not just imported ideologies, but it is also nurtured by foreign funding agencies with all manners of economic and career advancement and incentives offered to you if you convert. You will be rewarded if you convert, as with rice bag Christians, but you will be hounded and marginalized if you dare stand your own ground. Now, I really find such ideologies which try to box your thinking into a set pattern, issue you dictates of what's right way of looking at things and what's wrong, what's not acceptable. It is actually no different from the way colonial missionaries used to behave with regard to, the heathens that they came to convert. And feminism, especially for third world women or women from countries like India, becomes a very lucrative career option. They offer you five-star globe trotting, provide crores to set up well-heeled NGOs. They offer you fellowships in foreign universities, cushy jobs in elite research centers, also media houses, bureaucracy, and even judiciary today. I mean, these are all become their captive power citadels. Now, I really believe that, firstly, all ideologies in the Hindu worldview, all ideas are time specific. The greatest of ideas are time specific, culture specific, and region specific. I'm sure you know that our Shastras are very different from the sacred texts of Abrahamic faiths. They are not commandment giving texts.
Yes.
And they're all emphatic. In fact, all Shastrakars, all Smritikars are emphatic that one shoe fits all mindset makes mincemeat out of minds, heads, and hearts. And therefore, you have to, keeping certain basic dharmic values in view. And mind you, I don't think Hindu faith traditions can be called religion. Uh, the Abrahamic religions are different, and the term we better use for ourselves is not religion, because that brings with it a whole baggage which slots you in in also it creates a false equivalence, and we should really avoid it. Now, since we are not used to commandment giving texts, neither the Vedas nor the great epics, the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, nor the Shastras, nor the Smritis, none of them issue commandments which must be obeyed. There's
Yes.
no threat that if you don't do this, you shall be punished, you shall go to hell, rot in hell, fire forever, or be boycotted socially. And there's such a diverse variety of ways of living and being that's available to us, that what feminism offers in contrast is so pitiful. All that it offers women is very mechanical notion of equality. 50%ism is the maximum it can hope to give in a very mechanical, imbecile manner. That's not how you can live life. You wash 50% of the dishes, and I do 50% of the cleaning and cooking. I mean, this kind of, I'm making it light, but basically, everywhere you're forever looking at what pie of the cake do I have? And do I have a 50% pie or not? That's to me a very mechanical way of ensuring equality. And equality actually becomes a very poor thing when you compare to what Hindu dharmic worldview gives to women. Firstly, I'm not Adam's faltu haddi. I'm not Adam's spare rib, nor am I a temptress, nor am I a creature who ensured the fall of mankind and therefore must carry that horrible load and gift on my shoulders. As you mentioned right at the outset, that an essential tenet of Hinduism, pre Vedic, Vedic, and post Vedic, is that Shakti, the feminine energy, is believed to represent the primeval creative principle underlying the cosmos. She is the energizing force of all divinity, of every being and every sentient as well as non sentient being. And Shakti is known by the generic name Devi, derived from the Sanskrit word Div, which means to shine. The feminine has such positive connotations. Our great epics, the Vedas, and the Puranic literature give a whole array of names and attributes to the universal feminine power, which is worshipped, as you well know, in the form of diverse Devis. Sri Lakshmi is celebrated as the goddess of wealth and prosperity. But Sri Lakshmi is not just a distant heavenly figure. There's no sharp divide between the human and the divine. So, a loved daughter in law will invariably be referred to, or the coming of a daughter in law, the coming of Lakshmi. And all the rituals associated with coming of a daughter in law are as though to welcome Lakshmi incarnate. Saraswati, the presiding deity of arts and knowledge. And it's very common for parents to refer to a talented daughter or a talented wife, husband referring to his talented wife as Saraswati incarnate. A Subbalakshmi would be called Saraswati ka vaas hai inke kant mein. And even ordinary women, every mohalla, every city, every village in India would have many mini Lakshmis, many Saraswatis, many who are revered in their own way. And Durga, as you well know, is the vanquisher of evil. And earth itself is worshipped as goddess Prithvi, and hence Bharat Bhumi, the landmass that constitute India, has come to be worshipped as Ma Bharati. So we tend to infuse entire nature with sense of the sacred. And the even Durga, again, you don't have to be just sitting in temples. Any woman who displays outstanding courage, is fearless, is capable of vanquishing wrongdoers, is invariably referred to as Durga incarnate. And believe you me, I learned to play Durga even before I became a Durga devotee, because as a child, anytime anybody tried to mess with me, I was a very peaceful child. But my mother would invariably warn people who ever tried to mess with me, uska Durga roop mat jaga,
Yes.
because then you had it.
Yeah.
And I learned, therefore, very early on to assume that Durga roop as and when required. But mind you, Durga is not just about being militant, vanquishing. Once she has done the needful with regard to vanquishing evil and re-establishing dharma, she's a benign, nurturing mother. And so, this business of being forever an angry, militant woman, having that monolithic personality, you don't need to have. You can be benign mother figure like Shiv ki Parvati, Ma Sita. You could be a besotted lover like Radha, who's worshipped in her own right
Yes.
for her bhakti. And you can be Durga, you can be Saraswati. And mind you, all these at different times, different situations will bring out these different aspects of you. So we've not had to be boxed in that manner. And mind you, whatever I owe to myself, I think is thanks to a very desi liberalism of my parents, as opposed to the very intolerant Stalinist variety of liberalism that feminists and socialists and leftists claim to uphold. Their liberalism chokes you because
Right.
my way or highway. You're not aware enough. You're not a full woman. You're not, if you don't wear that label. And
Right.
I've invariably found this my last sentence before I hand over to Preeti. That wearing that label doesn't even ensure that you're pro women. I find many feminists, at least in India, virulently woman hating. And their idea of feminism is me, mine. Give it to me, and then you're doing right by women. If I don't get what I insist on getting, right or wrong, then you're anti women. So to me, it's far more important to nurture women, to stand by them, but not at the cost of treating men as enemies, but learning to coexist with dignity.
So true. So true. I love some of the aspects you said. I think all of us have the experience of, some days being Durga Ma in our Rudra Roop, and sometimes being the nurturing Lakshmi, and sometimes being the knowledge giving Saraswati. And I think that is the beauty of not just women, but every human is, they can different aspects of all these beautiful people. Now, Preeti, anything to add?
Absolutely. Well, namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. And thank you, Madhuji, for that great talk. Amazing. I did read your essay, actually, and I have often quoted it when I've written on this very topic, because I just love some of your very witty statements in there, very juicy.
You,
So
you,
as
you will, by
a
the way, read a revised version of it very soon because that was written some
okay, I
30
see.
years ago. I'm
Okay,
revising it for a new collection of essays I'm doing, and it's called
amazing.
Beyond Copycat Feminism.
Wonderful, which is exactly what in India this feminism has become. So for me, as a Sanatani, as a Bharatiya living here in uh, great country of America, I actually see two different issues. One is the state of Western feminism itself. Now that itself has morphed. Unfortunately, it's derailed, I would say. So what started off as a great movement about rights and equality, parity. Now it's sort of turned into this male hating, man bashing, identity politics driven, toxic intersectionality train and machinery called this fifth wave of feminism, and it's heavily politicized and weaponized by political groups, by activism groups, by feminist groups all around the world, but specifically the West. So Western women themselves are finding that they are, even though they have more uh, power and equality than ever before in history, they're actually less happy today than they've ever been. And why is this the case? This is very bizarre. That's because they're not, the notion of what it means to be a woman has changed. There's so much force down our throats, and we are told how to think and how to behave. And, I think less than 10%, I think it's 7% of women around the world officially consider themselves feminists. So this is a very, very tiny number. One would think it's 60% if you look at media articles and all the rhetoric around this topic, because it's such a hot topic. But actually, it's a very, very tiny amount. I think women are getting turned off by what radical feminism has morphed into today, and making the man the enemy, and demanding for get rid of all the men in power and only have females, or have only all female sort of lists or groups, and so on, or and we don't need a guy, we can do everything on our own. That is not Shiva Shakti. That is not yin yang. It doesn't work. So the West is having its own serious, I think, problems. It's at a fork, because moving forward, if we don't do something, I think we are really going to jump off the cliff, and it might be too late. In some way, we must sort of really wake up to what's going on and make sure it doesn't continue to get politicized and weaponized in the way it is, and men aren't happy, women aren't happy. The We're not getting what we want out of this movement. So that's one thing. Now, when it comes to India, the issue is, we import these Western norms and superimpose them on Indian society, on a society, a culture, set of traditions that has been around for thousands of years, and in some ways, many ways, actually works. So now we're going to put, this sort of system that doesn't work, it doesn't quite work. You superimpose it on something that does, and I think the khichdi that you get in the end is very dangerous. And it's you need to tread very carefully, because I think there's a lot of conflation happening, and there's a lot of sort of delusion around it. These Indian activists sort of thinking that that they live in America, and they want to sort of force down those sort of ideals onto Indian women who are actually quite happy the way that they've been brought up, with their ideals, with their traditions, and so on. And then, of course, you bring in the Sanatan dharmic aspect of it. That's another layer altogether.
Right.
So that's just the sort of the conundrum that we face, I think. Especially me, I observe it. I observe it in my Western circles and friends. I know what's going on, and then with my Indian friends, and with Indian women, or even with what's going on in India, I see what's going on, and it is both need to be fixed in a way. I just think for my own life, I have found dharmic feminism, or Indic feminism, and those ideals extremely important. They've been my tools. They've given me fortitude. They are what make me unique. I think the most beautiful thing about the Hindu feminism, or the real Shaktiman, is there's no encroachment of spaces. We it's not about rights anymore and fighting for rights. It's about duty. So we know our place in the world. We know that there are places where we are irreplaceable. A mother cannot be replaced. So you may be the CEO out there, but when you enter your home with your children and your parents, you are someone different. You mean everything to them, and nobody can take that place, right? So you must sort of really uphold that. And with the Shiva Shakti, it's the Shiva is like, the man, it's the computer in the society, but he won't be able to get charged up unless you plug in the Shakti, which
Right.
happens to be the divine feminine essence. So we really need to find the balance. I think Hinduism actually offers the best model for this, the complete marriage and the beautiful harmony of the two. it's needed in the world. I think we need ambassadors to talk, write, teach this en masse, because I think that's really the only thing that can, give the world a new model, I think. So that's those are my observation. That's what I deal with. I speak a lot on this issue, and it's nice to get feedback. Of course, you'll have people criticizing it, and they sort of take things into a slightly different direction, and they only want to complain and say, "But what about this statistic and that statistic?" Well, statistics are like mini skirts. They sort of hide more than what they reveal. So you must be careful when you look at them. So I'll leave you with that, and I'm sure that this amazing conversation will continue and will go into different directions.
Yes, you both encapsulated it so beautifully because, even it's interesting, right? We are here today in honor of International Women's Day. The history of International Women's Day is rooted in the right, the struggle for voting in Soviet Union and Germany and many other countries. It's a struggle that we as Indian women can't relate to because, we got the vote at the same time as Indian men did. So it was a struggle for the country, not for women particularly. But it's a perfect example of how what I tried to open with it, that even though it's not part of our experience, it's what we think about and how we frame our world. Because the world, I think it's very important for all of us to realize that good or bad, we do live in a world that is defined by paradigms that are not our own. We may not agree with them personally, but at least I know for me, in living a normal life, doing it's not possible to avoid these paradigms. So it's great to hear how you all have navigated these paths, because those paths are not ours, but they're paths we need to tread on, and we need to navigate and advance on them. So with that background, what should we as women's rights activists really focus on in today's world? And, Hinduism has so much to offer, like you said. You talked about Shiva, Shakti, and every god is worshipped. A lot of our gods are worshipped with a feminine counterpart: Radha, Krishna, Rama, Sita, Shiva, Shakti. This is the land of the Ardhanarishwar. So with that kind of background in mind, how does your faith and your background influence your goals and day-to-day interactions? Because those are shaped by a faith that is different.
Are you asking me?
Sure, yes.
Okay, Pushpita. Firstly, what I'd like to remind us always, me including, especially me, that we should avoid the temptation of projecting our worldview as the best. It's best for us. Yes. You may not take it. We are happy. If you have other ideas of the best, so be it. And we should not ever peddle it as the best, except insist on the right of everybody to allow us to choose what appears good or best to us. To me, that's very important. You see, the other thing is, for example, even this business of consort goddesses, every devata is incomplete, even dead, without his Shakti. But there's another thing to be remembered. One, you can be an atheist and be a Hindu. You don't have to believe in any god, deva, dev, devata, devi. Nahi hai, even wo bhi chalega. And that we must never lose sight of. Those who wish to remain within the cultural and civilizational milieu without yielding to this or that deity, that's okay. That's fine too. But coming back to these goddesses, our devis, it's significant that while consort goddesses like Ma Sita, Ma Parvati, and so on, are revered, loved, but the ones who are feared are the non-consort goddesses like Durga, Kali, and many Gram Devis and Devatas. In fact, it's they who are worshipped in a totally different manner. Nobody fears Bhagwan Ram, Bhagwan Krishna. You love them. We actually talk to them. We treat them like part of our family, and hence the deity is fed every day, bathed, fed, rested, celebrated exactly as you would a member of the family. But it's the non consort goddesses who become even more powerful. And that's an important reason why women in India who choose to remain single, who don't need a male protection, who don't even need a male partner to feel complete, whereas the male gods are incomplete without their Shakti, but women, the feminine, becomes more powerful without the overarching presence of the male, even as Ardhanari Narishwar. That's really important, and which is an important reason why a large number of women, for example, through the freedom movement, or a large number of bhakti saint poets who are revered like demi goddesses in different regions of India, they became worship worthy creatures. They either stayed unmarried or walked out of marriages. And that's quite unusual. In the West, for example, if you stay unmarried, and especially if you're not sexually attached, oh my God, they'll send you to a shrink and they say something wrong with you, because Freud has really messed them up and makes them think with the lower half of the body. It overpowers the top half of the body. But in India, those who acquire power to control the sexual urge and don't need a male companion, such women become doubly powerful, or acquire a totally different stature in real life as well. Now, coming to the, you mentioned the right to vote and how the feminist movement started. Actually, the Women's Day is related not so much to the right to vote campaign, but it was some strike of women in some place in Europe. It actually has no relevance in a way for the rest of womankind. And to my mind, it's actually much more important that every culture has its own day for women. We don't have, we don't actually, but in India, we don't need Indian Women's Day, because the Navratra festival that comes twice a year is all about worship of the feminine, among many other things. So we don't need one day. Actually, we claim every day as our own. Coming to the right to vote and other rights that the feminists had to fight for, and I do respect the Western feminist movement for having battled very adverse circumstances and having battled very nasty male opposition in order to claim right to equality, right to equal education, right to vote, right to education, and other, right to job opportunities, right to equal pay for equal work has been a big battle. By contrast, for us in India, all these rights came graciously. There was no battle. And in fact, from 19th century onwards, when the incipient freedom movement began to take place, with it also came social reform movements, which took on all those issues which had begun to adversely affect women thanks to foreign invasions. We all the sad part is that the pathologies that became inherent or became were forced upon Hindu society by Islamists and then later by Christian missionaries and colonial rule, they are being attributed to Hinduism. Parda, for example, or Char Diwali, they valid only in areas which witnessed very brutal Islamic invasions, and with each invader and Mughal rulers capturing women as sex slaves in lakhs and subjecting them to the most horrific conditions and exploitation of the kind that in Syria ISIS is doing today. We face that kind of situation, women of India, at the hands of Islamic invaders for 1,000 years, and we shouldn't forget that. And that really, those wounds that have been inflicted led to certain pathologies. However, we shouldn't forget that whereas the Western feminists had to fight their battle against male hostility and opposition. In India, leading freedom fighters, male reformers, actually led the movement for the strengthening of women's rights and removing all disabilities. And in this context, I would like to give you a small snippet about the right to vote campaign in India. When Montagu Chelmsford came to India in 1917, it contrasts really brilliantly with the battle for voting rights in Europe. When Montagu and Chelmsford came to India in 1917 to work out some reforms towards self-government, Sarojini Naidu and Annie Besant led a small delegation of women to demand that the same rights of representation in legislatures be granted to women as well. The British government tried to evade the issue by suggesting that the new legislatures they were creating, which included Indian representatives, should be allowed to decide for themselves on this issue. This was said on the assumption that Indian male, being more backward, would never be able to accept the idea of equal political rights for women. But the British were taken aback that when, beginning with the Madras legislature between 1922 and 1929, each one of the legislators voted to make it possible for women to be represented in them. And the testimony of Margaret Cousins, an Irish feminist who played a major role in women's organizations in India as well as in Britain, brings out this feature very well. Please listen to this one carefully. She says, "Perhaps only women like myself, who had suffered from the cruelties, the injustices of the male politicians, the man-controlled press, the man in the street in England and Ireland, while we waged our militant campaign for 8 years after all peaceful and constitutional means had been tried for 50 previous years, only we could appreciate fully the wisdom, nobility, and the passing of fundamental tests in self-government of these Indian legislators between the Madras Legislative Council in 1921 and Bihar Council in 1929. All the legislative areas of India had conferred the symbol and instrument of equal citizenship with men on women who possessed equal qualifications. And that was a limited voting right. But the point is that we didn't have to beg, we didn't have to fight, we didn't have to cry, we were not beaten blue for demanding these rights. And for example, Annie Besant was first woman president of Indian National Conference. She presided over 1917 session. Much before we got limited democracy under colonial rule, we had a woman president. Sarojini Naidu was Gandhi's choice for Congress presidentship in 1925, much before the emergence of women's lobby within the Congress party. And I told you about this right to vote. In 1931, the Congress party of those days, not the Congress party of current orientation, as early as 1931, the national leaders passed a resolution at its Karachi annual session, committing themselves to political equality of women in all fields, regardless of their status, qualifications, age, region, gender, caste, religion. Now,
but we lost your camera.
So the point is, they didn't give us an occasion for gender war. But the feminists of today forget this history and they insist that we must launch gender war on the lines that feminists of late 19th century in Britain, early 20th century in Britain launched. But theirs was a different battle. We respect it. We salute that battle. We, learn from it. But it's not our battle. And I see no reason why we should... बारिश वहां होती है, छाता लेके हम यहाँ खड़े हो जाएं. Doesn't make sense.
Madhuji, that was fabulous. Unfortunately, we lost your camera. So if you could switch that back on. But Preity...
My God, how did this happen? Okay.
Yeah.
But could you hear me?
That was amazing. We heard you perfectly, and that was amazing. I was not aware of this interchange that had happened in pre-independence India. That is a total revelation, and it just shows how deep-rooted the respect for both sexes is in our culture. It's a fabulous incident. Thank you for sharing that. So I wanted to just based on that, Preeti, did you have anything to add before I want? And I also, sorry, before I move on, a reminder to the audience, please send in your questions. We will certainly try to look at them and answer them. So please text in your questions on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, wherever you happen to be watching us. So, Preeti, what would you say is, how do you navigate, or how does your faith influence your life as you navigate the world in today's
Yeah, that's a
context?
great question. In my having grown up in the Middle East, in a Islamic theocracy, where I really was a ethnic and religious minority, and then moving to Europe and then Australia and now America, I've always been an outsider. And the one thing that has always given me strength is actually my tradition, my faith, my culture, including my idea of um, power and independence, freedom, and also specifically female power that comes from my upbringing and what my mother taught me and what I saw in her. And all of this is obviously rooted in Hinduism and in the Bharatiya sort of traditions. What I've noticed was, again, this the 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 lack of encroachment, not having to sort of take from somebody so that you can have something for yourself. Like nobody needs to lose for you to gain something. The perfect harmony of the male female, which I think again is missing today or very distorted today. And uh, for myself, I think what does it mean to be uh, feminine? It's not looking like a man, and not uh, dressing like a man or acting like a man. And because that's not where power lies. I think the lie that has been sold to society is that power only lies in within that male structure and in jobs and positions that are traditionally more male heavy, let's say, um, executives and the kind of industries that usually men go into. But that's not true, because you can find power anywhere. And also, you don't need to dress and act and talk like a guy to be a powerful, commanding person. I think the most beautiful thing about Indian women specifically is, you can be a CEO, but they're dressed in a beautiful sari. They're extremely feminine, and I think in my travels, I've been to over 100 countries, and the feedback that I always get is men always, come up and tell me, Indian women, they're so beautiful, they're so dignified, they have there's something very feminine about them, the way that they carry themselves. It's effortless, but they're so much woman. And it's very attractive to men all around the world, and that's a quality that we should never lose in this pursuit of thinking we need to be more modern, or we need to fight regression and oppression, and let's ape the West, let's look towards the West and be all that they are. Well, they're going backwards, so you don't want that. But for myself, I always thought that true essence of feminism is vulnerability, softness, openness, being all of those wonderful things, giving, receiving, allowing, making the world a better place, being loving, and being sort of come from love, and all of those great qualities that I think I just find that in Indian women inherently have that, and they own it, and the way that they sort of behave, it's already there. We don't need to do anything to, it's not like we're missing anything, and it's not something that we need to fight for. So I think we need to realize what is precious about our lineage, and really uphold it and cherish it and treasure it, because remember, this is the oldest goddess worshipping tradition left in the world. If we lose this, we lose everything. And there's so much Hinduism offers to the world, but it's so unique in many ways. And even if it's just for us, it's something that really deserves to be upheld for as long as we can. Because it sort of offers a solution, I think, to every problem in society. So we should be proud of that, know what it gives us, and not feel that we're missing anything at all. In my personal life, it's always helped me, and I think it's made me unique. I stand out uh, a lot because of that, how I think and behave, and a lot of that really comes from sort of that Indian and Hindu way of looking at things. So it's been incredible, I think, for me in my life.
I'd like to come in there and remind us, you, me, everybody, that we cannot essentialize Hindu women or Indian women. Let's not forget, if we have Sita, we also had Mantra, and we also had Kaikai, and if we had Draupadi, we also had the mother of Kauravas, who just could not act rationally, even in defense of her own kids. She led them to the most bizarre war and death. Um, so there've always been, just as there are outstanding men, there are outstanding women, just that Hindu women have a much larger, richer array of role models coming from hoary past, by way of queens, by way of philosophers, by way of scholars, not just a solitary Gargi or Maitreyi, but a whole range of them, then all the saint poets, Mahadevi Akka to Mirabai to Lal Ded, I mean, so many. It's not that it's only post feminism that we started producing women who stepped out into the public life. But we also, as I said, we have been also blessed with many mantras. They exist today, they existed then, and we have to be prepared for dealing with them, because if we romanticize ourselves too much, then we are not able to deal with reality. And that should never happen, because people shouldn't say, oh my God, you say women are like that, Hindu women, but look at this, how badly she's treating her daughter-in-law, how badly she's treating her mother-in-law, or whatever. That's very important. We must face life head on, uphold valuable ideals, but practical ideals, and so that we can take on those who act in ways that are disruptive and destructive. Now, as far as feminists are concerned, I believe they just don't like women as they are. They want to change them. It's, as I said, the Christian missionary mindset. They don't like human beings. They like only those who convert to Christianity. Similarly, feminists, wherever, the moment a woman wears that label, she wants to convince everybody that she must become be part of the echo chamber. And there are crazy stories I can tell of how young feminists, very zealous ones, come to me. I don't even know how to talk to my mother and explain that she shouldn't be so placid about her relationship with my father. And I asked them, tell me, is your father a beater? No. Does he starve your mother? No. Does he do, none of the horrible things. They themselves say, but you see, it's not equal. I mean, the point is, let your mother or your sister or any other woman work out her own equation.
Yeah.
You have right to intervene only when somebody says, look, I'm not able to handle my life. Can you help me resolve it? Not otherwise. You've no business to go intrude in that way. Secondly, and this, as I said, feminism that way becomes a weapon of making others feel inadequate, and follows the same civilizing mission that the British undertook in India as colonial power. Secondly, I think the most harmful contribution of Western feminism has been downgrading the role of women as homemakers and as mothers. And, absurd things like wages for housework. You want to be reduced to the status of a domestic paid servant. Next, it'll be wages for sex. So every night you fix a price for me. I mean, it's going to go that way. It's so ridiculous. Motherhood as sacred. I mean, in India, a man may or may not be, he may be forgiven for not being a good husband, but a man is never forgiven for being a bad son. Even at age 50, a man who bows in reverence before his mother and will say things like, it's very common to hear sons say, my mother is my God. She's the most sacred deity in my life. And if I am a good son, then I don't need to do any other prayer. This is the highest prayer I can offer. So the society has given women in our country, I mean, she's not referred to as housewife. She's referred to as Greh Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth of the household. And surely you're not supposed to maltreat your own Lakshmi incarnate. So there are so many cultural ways in which men have been taught to have a reverential relationship, not just vis-a-vis their mothers, but even sisters, the brother-sister bond. Not that it survives in that pristine form all across society, but it still does in many, many communities and in countless families. And I think we need to be able to protect it. And the part that is leading, I mean, feminism in many ways has, even for the Western woman herself, despite many achievements, which we celebrate on their behalf, so long as they don't force them on us and they don't want us to become echo chambers or copycats, I am perfectly willing to celebrate whatever they think are their achievements. But the narcissistic individualism, it doesn't make the survival of the family a realistic option, because family is all about giving, taking, becoming the same thing, enjoying nurturing, enjoying, not that only women should do it, but woman as the founding rock of the family. I don't think that role should be demeaned or undervalued in any way. And we are lucky that in India, you talked about we're all living in male-dominated world. I tell you, it's actually quite simple. My life has taught me. In India, we are very fortunate that men have been conditioned, thanks to tradition of goddess worship, reverence for mother, being, they're trained to obey women and enjoy it, like it, being ordered by women. But you have to be strong. You can't be a crybaby. Oh, please treat me as equality. You don't treat me as an equal. I mean, this equality number gets Indian men confused, because the culture conditions them for something else. Why are you settling for mere equality when they're saying, "Aap Lakshmi ban ke raho, aap Devi ban ke raho," but demonstrate those qualities? You can't be a chudel and say, "Why don't you treat me like Lakshmi and Saraswati?" You have to actually, those qualities that these Devis represent, and since the divine in the Hindu worldview dwells within each human being, you can be Ram-like, you can be Krishna-like. I mean, that option of rising to the divine or emulating those qualities is in all of us, is available to all of us. And if you don't emulate those qualities, all you want is this narcissistic form of individualism, then you act as a very disruptive force, whether in the family, within. And that's why you see in the West, divorce rate is so high. There's no predicting how long a marriage will last. And they want us to actually go that route. And I find it very worrying when Western feminists will say, but divorce rate in India remains so low, though you have so much oppression, etc. I mean, what kind of perverse mindset looks for breakdown of family as a sign and symptom of women's freedom. That
Wow.
means you become incapable of coexistence with other members of your own family. You become a misfit, a social misfit. And feminism ought not to be mass producing social misfits. It ought to produce a more balanced equation between men and women, fix the distortions, make family life more balanced, more egalitarian, but not in a 50%ism, that kind of mechanical, everything you do, I will do, whether
Right.
if you can get drunk and smoke your lungs to cancer point, why can't I do it? That kind of whatever stupidity you can do, I can do too, is best avoided.
So one of the things you brought up was the question I wanted to actually bring up is, obviously it is hard. You cannot say women are great, men are bad, all men are bad, women are good. We're all human. We have good and bad. Some of us are more good, some of us are more bad, and could change depending on different types of our life. However, the very fact that India or Hinduism has these ideals that we worship, the Devi, we train sons or children to worship the mother. Then when people don't live up to those ideals, instead of being seen as an aberration to the ideal, the very ideal itself is targeted. I don't know how many times I have heard the sarcastic remark every time there is violence against women, and there is a lot of violence against women, like there is in every society. But
Yeah.
in any other society, for example, when a man is hurt, we don't say, "Oh, you hurt a man," even though you worship the Son of God who is a man. That connection is never made. But when a woman is hurt, we constantly are told, "Oh, in a land that worships the Devi, a woman got hurt or raped or whatever." That dichotomy blows my mind, because it's like, are you saying we shouldn't have the ideal of worshiping women or elevating them just because we cannot meet that ideal all the time? By that reason, there should be no ideals in the world, because I don't think there is a single ideal in any society that meets it 100% of the time. But it's very ironic that the ideal becomes a stick to beat you. And I don't know what you guys say to that, but it drives me crazy, because I'm like, there are any number of men who are tortured in Christian societies, for example, and nobody says, "You worship a male god. Why are you torturing men?"
I think you're spot on. At least our ideals are worth emulating. I'm not sure the ideals of
Yes.
Abrahamic faiths are worth emulating. They've caused havoc everywhere they've gone. Everywhere they've gone, they've downgraded the status of women. Um, no matter where Christianity and Islam have spread. Islam, of course, is perversion personified in the way it treats women. But even Christianity, the whole idea of original sin and woman as temptress, and from there, and mind you, they forever, Pushpita, taking off from where you left, and you said it very well. Um, they're forever referring to social evils of Hindu society. You never hear about social evils of Christianity. Whereas there are too many there, especially this whole idea that emanates from the Bible itself, the feminine as the temptress who caused the downfall of man, and sex is evil. From there flows pornography. From there flows all kinds of women hating ideologies, and they dare lecture to us. As I said, none of us would ever be called faltu haddis, or as creatures who call the downfall of mankind. If anything, women are seen as the founding rock of family and society. And not every woman can live up to it. There are women who've been destructive throughout history, but many more, the majority, do sustain their family in ways that are at least in the direction of the ideals that are upheld. Even today, I find no dearth of Sakshat Saraswatis and Sakshat Lakshmis and Sakshat Durgas, though the the Western feminist idea of liberation, especially their very wonky notion of sexual liberation, is turning countries into giant brothels. Pornography, prostitution, the worst forms of flesh trade, sex slavery, and they dare lecture to us. And they call pornography, even feminists have started defending. There was a time the Western feminist movement was against pornography, was against prostitution.
I think we lost Madhuji.
Are
Preeti,
describing even pornography and sex work as choices, freedom of choice. And that really rattles me no end. And I hope we are sensible enough, though too many women in India are falling in that trap, I must say. And I'm quite shocked at the ease with which young women, in the name of my body, my right, are messing up their lives. My body, my right, yes, but my body, my right, and my responsibility to treat it. I mean, we say the human body is the abode of the divine. You can't abuse it. You can't become, an easy lay for any man, or not treat your body with responsibility, because sex for a woman is inevitably connected to procreation, and that's a sacred responsibility that nature has bestowed on women. To take it so lightly and to take sexual freedom in the direction of easy acceptance of prostitution, sex work, pornography, I think is horrific. And unless we take a firm stand on that, we just don't go anywhere, because that's going to sink too many lives. And today, we used to, at one time, our Sita Savitris used to be jeered at. Believe you me, they'll have to go looking for them as precious heritage items, at the rate at which they're trying to change women into very irresponsible creatures. And it's just self-indulgence with no sense of responsibility. And then when things go wrong, you say, oh, why is the police not? He raped me for 3 years. I mean, you have a live-in relationship with a rogue. And then once that fails, you say he was raping me for 3 years or 6 months, and now send him to jail. These kind of irresponsible acts in the name of feminist assertion really worry me.
So what should we think? I think we're at the hour. We'll wrap it up soon. What should women's rights activists, or women in general, because everybody is not an activist, what should we focus on going forward in today's world?
Preity?
You want to take that?
Okay. I don't come from an activism perspective.
Yeah,
I can only
that's what I
speak
said.
about
Not activist, just as a woman.
Practical and so on. But exactly. I mean, these are traps that we shouldn't fall under. And also, there's a lot of distortion and misappropriation as well by the West of our culture now. And we can see this in the world of tantra and sort of this sacred sexuality, where now they're taking something that has actually tantra, it comes from Kashmiri Shaivism, right? It's not about sex at all. It's it's a spiritual sort of life ideals and all of that teachings, all of that wonderful stuff. But look at what it's been cheapened to today in the West. So there are so many levels here where there's so much conflation and distortion that's happening. And our lineage is also under attack in many ways. So not only do we need to, make sure that we are not importing, things that don't work for us, we also should be mindful that somehow we're not exporting as well our sort of traditions, and they're misappropriated. Because I see that a lot here in the West. The hippie movement has done that. But going back to the conversation, uh, it's important to understand that this, upholding, I mean, this is a culture that where we have more goddesses than gods, right? There's the line is we've got 33 million goddesses. So I mean, it's all symbolic, but it's just, I'm shocked that the West doesn't understand where we come from and our background, and really our proper narrative. They have such a the blinded view of our culture, and especially Sanatan Dharma, I would say. And obviously that needs to be at least corrected, and we can only do it with authors and speakers and teachers and scholars, right, who do good work and set the record straight, and so on. But moving forward for Indian women, my letter to the Indian woman is always, know where you come from, know your roots, your identity, hold on to it, um, with dear life, and know that it's very precious. And in the times of Kali Yuga, I think it's more precious than ever, because it's going to take you to, it will keep you safe, I think. And don't be so hypnotized by the West and what's happening here. I see a lot of women in India who may have not traveled outside of India, and they have the view of the world that they have is quite of an illusion. And myself, having lived all around the world, I have seen everything, and obviously I've been to India a lot as well, and I know what's out there. And I'm very proud of uh, my my background and where I come from. So moving forward, we need to uphold what we have, treasure it, cherish it, and in the right way, we can share it with the world. I think whoever needs to gain, get that wisdom will, as these things go. And like Madhuji said, there's no point in trying to say that this is the best narrative or this is the only way, because then we are no better than them, right? Then we become as rigid as them and as Abrahamic as them in some ways, and that's not what we are about at all. So there's much work to be done in this area, both in the West as well as in India. And I think uh, the next sort of few decades are going to be very crucial, because it seems like the world is going in different ways, different directions, I should say, and we need to be careful. I think the government can come in somehow and make and do more regulation with these so-called NGOs, and see what they're up to and where the funding is coming from. What activities are they actually doing? What are they trying to sell in India? Because I think it's not what they say uh, they're doing, and there's much damage has been done, and I think can continue to be done if that's not sort of really looked at. I think so. From an activism perspective, we need to take back the power. The Indian people need to, and we don't want some NGO from the West coming and lecturing us on
Right.
morality or feminism or any of that.
That's great.
Um,
And I
there
just
are,
want
yeah, Pushpita.
Oh, I was just saying, I know we are over the hour, so I wanted to wrap it up with just a question on what is, could you share some women who, through history or in our stories, who have inspired you or continue to inspire you? We've talked about some of the better known figures, but there's so many, because it's not that we have a few, right? So the challenge is, like, somebody once asked me, give me a list, and I'm like, I can't give you a list. It'll be like a book or like an encyclopedia, because the history is so old. Where do I start? But one thing that resonates, so as an example, I'll give you what resonates with me a lot, is something I discovered just a few years ago, is that the Rig Veda showcases some 30 the women rishikas. Their work is still alive, and that is amazing. This is probably the oldest women authors that are still part of our history and still inspiring us today. And I cannot think of something more powerful, that a woman who spoke to us so many thousands of years ago, her words continue, and there are people who still listen to her and still follow her and look to her for guidance. So I'd love to hear thoughts from each of you. Madhuji.
I agree with you. The inspirational figures are so many in every domain, in the domain of knowledge, music, rulership, women as rulers, women as scholars. Name it and you have it. But I think you asked me what we can do, what we should be doing. And I think that's really important for us to figure out, because we cannot deny that Indian society is today really messed up because of whitewashed brains. The Macaulay Putras and Putris that are ruling the roost are causing havoc, and we are not able to control them because we want to prove ourselves liberal to the world. Firstly, I think foreign funded NGOs should be immediately banned. Foreign funded academia also should be immediately banned. We should learn to fund our own universities and research with our own money. We should learn to fund our social activism or whatever goody-goodieism we want to practice through our own money. If you can't dip into your own pocket and do work for society, you have no right to call yourself a social worker. If you need a per diem allowance of $1,500 to go and visit a nearby village so that you can see how unhappy they are, you have no business to. You're serving yourself in the name of the cause. So we need to ban these, the very crass variety of social activism and social work that Western donor agencies have introduced into India. We used to do it, and some of us still believe in doing it, as Niswarth Seva, where you pay your debt to society. You give of yourself to society as part of your repaying of debt to this society, not make it a lucrative career option. This needs to change, and we better learn to do that. Secondly, we need to be better informed about our past. It's become very fashionable to talk about Indic perspective, Hindu perspective, Sanatan perspective. We cannot reduce them to mere cliches, fashionable cliches, in the same way that feminists have, certain keywords that they throw around in order to convince the world that they're on the right path. We can't afford to do that. We have to be better informed. We have to promote genuine scholarship. And that can happen only when we start valuing our own languages. Sanskrit, Pali, Marathi, Telugu, Kannada, Kashmiri in the Sharada script, Punjabi, Hindi, name it. And their dialects. The richest literatures have been produced in so many languages of India. English literature starts producing its first classics in 14th century, whereas we produce the greatest classics thousands and thousands of years ago. Now, Ramayana, Mahabharata being dated 15,000 years ago or more or whatever, and we've destroyed willfully that heritage. Dominance of English must stop. We learn English as a foreign language. By all means, acquire competence in it. No need to shun any language. But if you don't know your mother tongue, if you don't have a national language that links us all, could be Sanskrit, could be Hindi, could be whatever. But we have to become multilingual all over again. We can't be multilingual only in the sense of, I know Spanish and I know French and I know English. No. In the, before the English educated elite destroyed the education, even illiterate people, would know 2-3 languages with facility. My granduncle knew 19 languages, including Sanskrit, 19. And he was a Rajvaidya. So, a real scholar. And he wasn't the only one, because you wouldn't have all these pilgrimages from north to south if you were not picking up languages as well. People from the south going to Badridham, and people from the north going down to important Char Dhams or pilgrim centers in the south, in the east, in the west. It wouldn't have been possible if people weren't picking up languages, were not multilingual. We need to revive. We cannot revive our traditional knowledge heritage without nurturing languages of India. And that job has to be done with emergency, because even our ancient manuscripts, the Islamists burnt libraries. millions and millions of precious manuscripts, classics were destroyed, whether at Nalanda, Takshala, here, there, everywhere. Then the British told us Macaulay's great wisdom, one shelf of English literature books is worth all the literature that India ever produced in millennia. Now that mindset still stays. We insist on making English the language of opportunity. Must stop and be rooted in a genuine sense, produce world-class scholarship. It's a matter of shame that when people want to be Sanskrit scholars, they go to Chicago, they go to Heidelberg. They don't think of going to Varanasi because we allowed our universities to rot out. And, so the knowledge traditions in every field, in engineering, in medicine, now Ayurveda is proving how much superior it is in ensuring health. Corona has proved it. And the world is now taking our kalas and Baba Ramdev's brews and Giloy and Tulsi and Haldi, Haldi Doodh and all that. Now, this was household wisdom. And the point I'm trying to make is it can't just be these token gestures. We have to get going and promote scholarship. The government is not yet in a mood to do its bit with the seriousness that's needed, but private initiatives. Nalanda was not built by any government. Of course, the ruling elite has a role. But I think it's important that the elite sections, the moneyed, wealthy sections, start, for example, getting our temples freed and making our temples centers of learning as they used to be. Now, our temples are languishing or become just token places where you just go, have darshan, offer some. We need to revive the knowledge traditions and relocate them in the grand temples of India, reclaim them from the government. The government has no business to be running Hindu temples and looting them for so-called secular purposes. So there's a whole agenda that we can carve out, Hindu rights agenda, and also repair the Constitution of India, which is actually made us hostage to blackmail, it's hostage to break up India forces, and also work to ban conversions. The speed with which India is yielding to conversions, the demographic invasion of Islam and Christianity, there will not be any India left. There'll be many mini Pakistans, and there'll be many, the African kind of Christian enclaves in India. There won't be any India left if we don't wake up. So there's no need to be smug. There's no need to be complacent. And somebody asked, can I take 1 minute for Brahminical patriarchy, which is one of the sticks to beat up us all with. Let me tell you very loud and clear, as bluntly as I can. The attack on Brahmanism was, number one, don't forget, the Islamists came and slaughtered. They used to be proud of the number of kilos of Jneus that they would collect after chopping off heads of Brahmins. The British did the same, de-Brahmanized. Why? Because Brahmin is not by birth. Even Mahabharata says it. We know, all our Shastras make it clear. It's by Varna, what you do. And these were repositories of knowledge. Brahmins were those who were repositories of traditional knowledge. And it's only by destroying traditional knowledge that they could enslave us intellectually. So patriarchy, I mean, Brahmin India is the one that still worships Devis. It's the Brahminical imagination that saw the cosmos in this scientific way. Today, NASA and physicists, all over are following the Vedas and our traditional sacred texts to understand how this universe came into being. Um, and we think it's all mumbo jumbo because they're stealing our knowledge, using it, and Rajiv Malhotra puts it very well. They digest it, then they cast away, and then tell us you are fools to have followed it because they give us empty shells. So reclaim the knowledge and don't be defensive about Brahman because it's, mind you, in the 1,000 years that Islamists and Christians started attacking Brahmanism, India has produced no great text, no great scholarship, no great inventions, whether in the field of science or medicine or engineering. I mean, look at the architectural tradition. We didn't produce any great architecture even after they started destroying these traditional knowledge systems. So they had to destroy the traditional knowledge system because that makes them feel so inferior. You can't sell Christianity or Islam to somebody who's rooted in knowledge of Brahma and rooted in Indian traditional science and technology and other wisdoms. So they had to destroy it in order to enslave us to these uncivilized death cults that they brought to India. And so let's not be defensive about that. They did no wrong. They produced the greatest of literatures, the greatest of advancements, so long as Brahmins were respected. They were not an oppressive elite. Brahmins did not hold political power. They actually uh, repositories of knowledge, and therefore the kings went and bowed at their feet. So let's not be defensive about them. And all these patriarchy hunters, tell them to mind their own business and get out of the
Mm.
faltu haddi complex before they pick up the vocabulary to talk to us
Totally.
appropriate.
And I know in our questions we had a number of people asking about how we could influence younger women to not fall prey to some of these trends and issues. And Fun, you've laid out a lot of the problems that are being brought. And I think there's a lot of learning from all the insight that was shared today as to how to continue to be proud of one's faith and really not buy into this narrative that has been built about Hinduism being anti-women, oppressive, and the very fake history that is taught to us of how all the powerful women are edited out of our history, and we are presented a very one-sided sort of narrative that is meant to make us ashamed of our origins. So I think we are way over the time. And Preeti, I don't know if you wanted to just close with like where a quick thought on where you draw your strength and inspiration from that would be relevant to other young women starting to navigate their life in Northern America.
Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic question. I've been speaking to a lot of youth of late on this very topic, identity, your roots, culture, where you get your power from. Um, Definitely, I think most Indian people or kids who live abroad, I mean, usually they do have a decent, a good upbringing where some level of culture is instilled, and a lot of our morals and values come from that upbringing, and of course your parents' values as well. But I would say try to read our classics, read the Ramayana, read the Gita, read the Upanishads, read the English translations of these books. That's a great way. Um, find a spiritual organization somewhere that has classes, or a teacher at some point when you feel that you're ready, because that way you'll get someone really showing you the wisdom, and kind of explaining it in a way that you may understand. um, do your research. The beauty is that the truth is out there. Everything is out there today in the world of technology and the internet. So the answers to your question are out there. You just need to be a gopher and find it. But really know who you are. Know that you come from this incredible lineage and this great civilization that has so much to offer. It's rich, it's diverse, it's deep, and very, very more relevant than ever, I think, today in this time. So, try to bond also with other Indian youth and, other Indian students or young people in your area or in your life, and see if you can maybe collaborate with someone, or you don't have to go through this journey by yourself. I think there is
Right.
help out there. So find the like-minded people. They are there for you. Reach out thanks to technology, now you can have conversations with anybody on the other side of the world. So find your group. I think find the group that is genuinely hungry and seeking for this great knowledge and wisdom. It's there. And try to take time to really immerse yourself in your own culture. I think it has all the answers. I think you just need to revisit it and remember it. And I always say this, that it's, our civilization, our knowledge, our culture has been around since the very beginning of time. And I always say that it will also be there at the very end of time too. But we must uphold it as we move through time, so that, God forbid, we lose it somewhere, because so many other civilizations have come and gone and wiped
Yeah.
out, and we don't want ours to follow that. But I just want to wish all the young people a lot of hope, a lot of encouragement. It's a beautiful thing when you stumble across it. It's like a pot of gold in the end. So it will be well worth your search. That much I can guarantee.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that insight. And I think I appreciate all the feedback that we got today. So much learning. I think there's a lot. And, to Preeti's point, I would make a definite plug to connect with other like minded people, especially living here in North America. Sometimes it can feel a little lonely. You can feel a little, you're the only one talking out in the void, but no, you're not. A little plug here for CoHNA, of course. Join us, follow us. We are definitely trying to reflect the diverse voices of the Hindu community, the ones that often get ignored. So do check us out and see if this is something you'd like to stay. But there's so many other fabulous organizations, both local, national, international. So like Preeti ji said, find your tribe. It's there waiting for you. On that wonderful note, I would really like to thank Preeti ji and Madhu ji for the wonderful insights that we have had today. I so enjoyed this conversation. I know we could be talking for another 2 hours, but unfortunately, we do need to be mindful of the clock. So again, thank you so much, and namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, dhanyavad. Thank you.
Dhanyavad.